I stepped out of my black Mercedes, the sleek metal catching the morning sun's glare. Another successful day at the firm behind me, another victory secured through sheer force of will and intellect. As I approached the front door of my lavish suburban home, I smoothed the lapels of my suit jacket, preparing my customary mask of cold indifference. "Michael, darling, you're home," Laura greeted me with a polished smile as I entered. Even in her elegant robe and perfectly coiffed hair, her eyes held a hollow emptiness. I offered a curt nod, brushing past her towards the kitchen. Our marriage had become a mere facade, a business arrangement of mutual benefit rather than any semblance of love or affection. We played our roles dutifully in public, but behind closed doors, a vast chasm divided us. A few nights later, we hosted our usual dinner party, entertaining the social elite of Chicago's upper crust. Laughter and chatter filled the air as Laura played the gracious hostess, refilling wine glasses and ensuring our guests wanted for nothing. "You know, Mike," my supposed best friend Daniel leaned in with a sly grin, "sometimes you have to show a little heart to get real loyalty." I scoffed at his drunken attempt at wisdom. "In my world, fear and respect are the same thing," I countered flatly. As the evening drew to a close and the last guests filtered out, Laura retired to her wing of the house, no doubt relieved to discard her charade until the next social obligation demanded we play happy couple again. A week later, Laura's mother Evelyn arrived for one of her interminable visits. As I passed by the sitting room, I caught a snippet of their conversation that made me pause. "These yoga classes are really doing wonders for your mood lately, dear," Evelyn gushed. "You seem so much happier." Yoga classes? Laura had mentioned no such thing to me. A flicker of suspicion took root in my mind, but I swiftly dismissed it. Laura knew better than to step out of line and risk the comfortable life I provided. Still, the seed of doubt festered over the following days. I found myself scrutinizing Laura's every move, searching for any hint of deception. Finally, I could abide the uncertainty no longer. If there was something amiss in my own house, I would uncover the truth, no matter how unpleasant. I knew I needed to uncover the truth, whatever it might be. A few discreet inquiries led me to a private investigator with a reputation for discretion, the ideal person to dig into Laura's activities unnoticed. A week later, the investigator returned with a thick manila envelope. I tore it open to find glossy photographs that confirmed my darkest suspicions: Laura entering a hotel room with a younger, undeniably attractive man. The images left no room for doubt or interpretation. As I studied the evidence spread before me, an icy fury gripped my core. How does she, after everything I had provided, the life of luxury and status I had so generously bestowed upon her? This was her gratitude? I briefly considered confronting her directly, but swiftly dismissed the notion. Laura didn't deserve the satisfaction of an emotional outburst or pleas for forgiveness. No, I would remain as cold and calculating as I was in the courtroom, meting out a punishment befitting her treachery. That evening, my younger sister Jessica came over for one of her occasional visits. I couldn't resist confiding in her, if only to reassure myself that I was in the right. "Jess, Laura's been unfaithful," I revealed, watching her expression shift from surprise to pity. "Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry," she said gently, placing a comforting hand on my arm. "But are you certain? Maybe there's an explanation, some misunderstanding." I silenced her with a look, extracting the damning photographs and spreading them across the desk between us. Jessica's eyes widened as she absorbed the indisputable evidence. "My God," she murmured. "What will you do?" "The better question is, what won't I do?" My voice was lethally calm. "She will pay for this betrayal, I can assure you of that." "Michael, please," Jessica entreated, her eyes glistening. "Don't do anything rash. Confront her, yes, but don't seek vengeance. It'll only breed more darkness in your heart." I shook my head, unmoved by her pleas. "She made her choice, Jess, and now she'll face the consequences." With that, I swept the photographs back into the envelope. My course was decided. Laura would reap what she had sown, and I would savor every agonizing moment of her descent. The following days were a flurry of calculated moves designed to deepen Laura's isolation and despair. I began by subtly turning her social circle against her through whispered rumors of her erratic behavior and possible substance abuse issues. Within a matter of weeks, the same women who had once fawned over her were responding with thinly veiled disdain and excuses to avoid her company. Next, I exercised my control over our finances, systematically restricting Laura's access to funds until she was utterly dependent on me for even the most basic expenses. The designer wardrobe she so loved became a distant memory as I refused to approve any new clothing purchases beyond the essentials. All the while, Laura remained unaware of the extent of my knowledge, no doubt misinterpreting my cold detachment as the usual distance between us. Let her believe that for now, the final blow would be all the more devastating when it inevitably came. "You're taking this too far, Michael," Jessica warned during one of her visits, her brow creased with concern. "What you're doing, it's cruel, even for you. Can't you see that?" I shrugged off her protests with casual indifference. She brought this upon herself. I'm merely delivering the consequences she failed to consider when she so carelessly disregarded our vows. My sister's disapproving frown did little to dissuade me. This path was set, and I would see it through to its ultimate, emotionally shattering conclusion. Laura would pay dearly for her sins. Finally, the night for the grand unveiling arrived. Laura and I were hosting another of our interminable dinner parties, putting on our usual charade of martial bliss for our oblivious guests. As the evening drew to a close and the last toadies had shuffled out, I turned to face my wife with an expression of utmost contempt. "We need to talk," I announced coldly. "In private." A flicker of apprehension passed over Laura's elegantly made-up features, but she nodded and followed me into the study without protest. I wasted no time in extracting the photos from my desk drawer and spreading them out in an accusing array. "Care to explain these, my dear?" I prompted with venomous sarcasm. Laura's reaction was as visceral as I'd hoped. Her complexion blanched, perfectly glossed lips parting in a soundless gasp of dismay. For several endless moments, she could only gape at the indisputable evidence of her infidelity laid so cruelly bare. "Michael," Laura choked out at last, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know how to explain this to you." "Explain?" I arched a disdainful brow. "By all means, do try. This ought to be exquisitely entertaining." She drew a trembling breath, hands twisting in the folds of her evening gown. "It was a mistake, a horrible lapse in judgment. But you have to understand, our marriage. There's been no intimacy, no connection between us for years. So you sought intimacy elsewhere?" I finished for her, mouth curling in disgust. "How convenient for you." "No, it's not like that," she insisted frantically. "Alex, he made me feel wanted, desired in a way you haven't for so long. But I never intended to fall for him. I swear it. It just happened." I laughed then, a bitterly mocking sound. "You expect me to believe that drivel? That you simply fell into another man's bed through no fault of your own? Don't insult my intelligence, Laura." Tears spilled freely down her cheeks now, mascara leaving dark trails. "I'm so sorry, Michael. Truly, I am. If I could take it back?" "But you can't," I stated flatly. "And you won't. This," I gestured at the photographs, "changes nothing and everything. Our marriage will continue, for appearance's sake if nothing else. But make no mistake, you will pay dearly for this betrayal." A choked sob escaped her. "What are you going to do?" My smile then was as chilling as a winter gale. "You'll find out soon enough. But I can promise this, my dear. By the time I'm through with you, you'll wish you had never been born." With that ominous vow, I turned and left her crumpled on the floor, weeping brokenly. Let the games begin. True to my word, the following days saw the escalation of my meticulous vengeance scheme. First, I located this Alex and systematically set about dismantling every aspect of his pathetic existence, one carefully aimed strike at a time. Utilizing strategic leaks of damaging information, I cast doubt on his professional competency and integrity until his employer had no choice but to dismiss him. From there, it took little effort to spread insidious rumors throughout his field, ensuring he would never find work in the city again. Within a matter of weeks, Alex went from smug homewrecker to unemployable pariah. When he inevitably confronted Laura in a blazing fury, I could only watch with satisfaction as she recoiled from the monster she'd helped create. "This is your doing," he raged, spittle flying. You promised we could be together, that we'd have a real life." "Alex, please," Laura entreated tearfully. "I never meant for this to happen, for you to get hurt like this." His harsh laughter was devoid of humor. "You never meant for it? Christ, Laura, were you really that naive?" When she made a desperate attempt to reach out to me, to plead for reason, I slapped her hand away with contemptuous force. "Did you forget what I told you?" I asked in a soft, dangerous tone. "This is the consequence you brought upon yourself, upon both of you." I left them then to their misery, secure in the knowledge that Alex's ruination was complete, and yet my grievance with Laura remained outstandingly unsettled. "You're going too far," Jessica accused during one of her increasingly frequent pleadings. "Destroying that man's life, his future. What you've done, it's monstrous." I shrugged, unmoved. He was a fool to think he could cuckold me without reprisal. This is the price for his arrogance. "And Laura," she pressed, shaking her head slowly, "what more do you have planned for her? Haven't you tormented the poor woman enough?" For a long moment, I said nothing, reflecting on the hollow satisfaction of my actions thus far. Certainly, I had achieved my goal of making them suffer for their sins. And yet, "Not nearly enough," I said at last in a tone of finality. "Not until she knows the depths of my wrath and the gravity of her mistake." Jessica's lovely features hardened into an expression of reproach and sorrow. "I don't know you anymore, Michael. This path of hatred and vengeance, it's twisting you into something monstrous. Please, for your own sake, let this go before it's too late." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. For in that moment, I knew there would be no relenting, no shred of mercy until the debt of Laura's betrayal was paid in full, even if it cost me the last vestiges of my very soul. In the weeks that followed, an uneasy détente settled over the house. Laura avoided me as much as possible, no doubt reeling from the devastation I had wrought upon her and her erstwhile lover. For my part, I took a perverse satisfaction in her misery, secure in the knowledge that she was utterly broken, just as I had vowed. Or so I thought. It was Jessica who first brought the troubling news to my attention during one of her visits, her expression grave. "Michael, I don't quite know how to tell you this," she began carefully, "but I have it on good authority that Laura has been meeting with a divorce attorney." I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach even as I struggled to maintain an impassive facade. "A divorce attorney?" I echoed, keeping my tone studiedly neutral. Jessica nodded. "From what I've heard, she's trying to build a case against you, documenting your financial manipulations, the isolation tactics, anything she can use as evidence of an hostile environment." White-hot fury lanced through me at the thought of Laura's audacity. After everything I had allowed her, the privileged life I provided, how dare she move against me in such a calculated manner? She would dare try to take what's mine? I bit out through gritted teeth. After her unforgivable transgressions? Can you really blame her, Michael? Jessica asked gently. "You've put her through hell these past months. Perhaps it's time to consider that you've gone too far, that the price has already been paid." But I was no longer listening. My mind raced with the countless steps I would need to take to neutralize this new threat, to regain control of the situation before Laura's schemes could deal irreparable damage. It began with the smallest of overtures, an apologetic smile here, a tender caress there when our paths chanced to cross, a gradual thawing designed to lull Laura into a false sense of security and progress. All the while, I made quiet inquiries through my own network of resources, seeking to uncover the identity of her legal counsel and any other potential allies. "What are you doing?" Laura asked with a mix of wariness and bewilderment after one such unexpected overture. "Why are you behaving this way, after everything?" I met her confused gaze steadily. "Isn't it obvious, my dear? I'm making amends, trying to rebuild what I so foolishly damaged through my pride and anger." She shook her head slowly. "I don't trust this, Michael. I can't trust you. Not after the hell you've put me through." Reaching out, I traced the line of her jaw with deceptive tenderness. Then trust this, I was wrong. Unforgivably wrong in how I reacted. You deserved better, deserved a husband who could see past his own ego to fight for the woman he loves. It was a calculated risk, applying such seductive lies to prey upon her deepest wants and vulnerations. But I could see the flicker of longing, of naive hope flickering to life behind her eyes. The small crack in her defenses that I could now begin to widen. Over the following days, I embarked on an intricately orchestrated campaign of manipulation, delicately pushing the boundaries of Laura's resolve while simultaneously cutting off any potential escape routes. The divorce attorney was discreetly threatened and coerced into dropping her case. Her closest friend and confidant hit with deftly aimed rumors that turned her into a social pariah overnight. Until finally, inevitably, Laura found herself isolated and cornered with nowhere to turn but me and my hollow promises of a fresh start. "What future is there for us, after everything that's happened?" she asked, spent voice tinged with resignation as she nursed a glass of Chardonnay one evening. "How can we ever go back to the way things were?" I took the glass from her hands and set it aside before pulling her unresisting body against mine. "We start over," I murmured against the curve of her neck, "put it all behind us like a bad dream, and awaken to a new reality. One where mistakes are forgiven, slates are wiped clean with each new dawn." She trembled faintly in my embrace. "You make it sound so easy." "Because it can be," I assured her. "So long as you trust me, have faith in the love I still bear you despite your lapse." It was a lie, of course, a grotesque fabrication designed to ensnare her utterly and completely under my control once more. But I could see the desperation mounting in her lovely eyes as all other paths were systematically cut off. Until at last, with seemingly no other choice, Laura capitulated into my seductively spun fantasies of redemption and reconciliation. The following days and weeks were an exercise in performative marital bliss, the happy couple emerging from their troubling ordeal with a newfound commitment to their union and one another. At last, it seemed the nightmare had been exorcised completely. That is, until the evening I stumbled across the evidence of Laura's defiance during a chance encounter, irrefutable documentation of her previous legal maneuverings, and my own underhanded subversion. Ice flooded my veins as I absorbed the damning pages, anger resurging with renewed vigor. The fool, the utter, naive fool, to think she could cross me in such a way without suffering the direst consequences. When Laura returned home that evening, I was waiting with the papers laid out in an accusing array, expression carved from granite. She paled instantly, eyes going wide with dismay and the first flickers of fear. "Michael, I can explain." "No," I said with deadly calm. "There will be no more lies, no more manipulations. You had your chance to walk away with some small remnants of dignity, and you spat on it." She opened her mouth, perhaps to plead or offer justifications, but I silenced her with a look of withering contempt. "Save your excuses," I bit out. "This latest betrayal has made it abundantly clear that you are simply incapable of learning, incapable of comprehending the depth of my dedication to our union." Tears sprang to her eyes, but I was unmoved as always by such transparent emotionalism. "The terms of our arrangement have changed," I stated flatly. "You will agree to any settlement I put before you, without protest or cavil. You will make a clean break and disappear from my life without a backwards glance. Attempt to fight me on this, and I promise you the consequences will be—" I allowed myself a small, cruel smile. "Severe, to put it mildly. This time, no sobs or histrionics. Only a weary, bone-deep resignation as Laura finally, truly understood the depth of her defeat and subjugation at my hands. With a jerky nod, she silently acquiesced to my ultimatums. The settlement meeting days later was little more than a protracted formality. Laura meekly acceded to the punishingly one-sided terms I presented, relinquishing all claims to our marital assets, our home, every scrap of her old life. When the final document was signed, binding her to her own diminished future, I watched with feelings too complex and tangled for easy definition. Anger, yes, that burned steadily. But regret as well, and a shocking hollowness that cut deeper than I cared to acknowledge. "Well," Laura said at last, raising reddened eyes to meet mine, "I suppose this is goodbye." I held her gaze levelly. "I suppose it is," I agreed in a clipped tone. There were no more grand histrionics or emotional appeals between us. Only the painful, inexorable parting of ways, a severance etched in stone. Laura turned and walked away without another word, finally understanding that she had gambled everything against a foe who could never be merciful. And in that moment, I knew I had emerged the victor, the unrepentant husband whose brutality had irrevocably shattered the life he had so staunchly defended. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.